The well on the Yoder farm ran for 109 years without a single filter cartridge. I know because I drank from it every summer of my childhood, and I have never once been sick from that water. I am going to tell you why that number matters, but not yet. Stay with me, because by the end of this, I am going to give you the exact ratio my grandmother used for her barrel filter. Sand to charcoal to gravel. A ratio I have never seen written down anywhere, in any book, on any website. It lived in her hands and in her memory. And now it is going to live in yours. I remember the morning the power went out for 3 days straight, back when I was maybe 12 years old. The English families down the road, that is what we called anyone outside the community, they were driving 40 minutes each direction looking for bottled water, fighting over the last cases in a gas station cooler. We did not go anywhere. We did not call it a method. It was just how it was done. My mother filled 2 buckets from the rain barrel, ran them through the sand filter built into an old wooden cask by the springhouse, boiled what we planned to drink that day, and went back to canning tomatoes like nothing unusual was happening. Because for us, nothing unusual was happening. Here is a question for you, and I want an honest answer in the comments, not a guess. How many days of stored, drinkable water do you actually have in your house right now, today, without turning on a faucet? Not water in bottles you forgot about in the garage. Water you know you have. Water you could count on your fingers. Type the number. Just the number. I read every single comment on this channel, and I want to see how many people answer 0. Because here is the truth nobody wants to say to your face. Your water is not yours. It belongs to a treatment plant that runs on electricity, pumped by stations that run on electricity, monitored by systems that run on electricity. Take the power away for 3 days, even 2, and in a lot of towns the pressure drops, the treatment slows or stops, and the water coming out of your tap is no longer something anyone is willing to guarantee. You never asked yourself whether there was another way, because for your entire life, there was only ever the one way. Same pipes, same plant, same dependency. And somehow, when the lights go out, you are still the one standing there holding an empty cup. Back in 1974, when the Safe Drinking Water Act was signed into law, it was meant to protect people. And in a lot of ways it did. But it also created an entire regulatory and industrial ecosystem around the idea that clean water is something delivered to you, checked by someone else, billed to you monthly, and never something you are expected to know how to produce yourself. Bottled water went from a strange novelty item to a business worth tens of billions of dollars within a couple of decades, built almost entirely on convenience and on a quiet, growing distrust of the tap. Nobody sat in a boardroom and decided to make you forget how to filter your own water. It happened slower than that, and more completely than that. One generation simply never had to learn what the generation before it knew by necessity. There is no money in telling you how to purify your own water for the rest of your life using sand, charcoal, and a fire. There is a great deal of money in selling you bottled water, one case at a time, forever. I have not bought a bottle of water since the day I left, and I do not plan to start now. Not because I am making some kind of statement, because I simply do not need to. Now, I want to be honest with you about something before I go further, because I do not want you thinking I am handing you a fantasy, This is not a magic fix for every kind of contaminated water on Earth. I will come back to that later because it matters, and I am not going to pretend it does not. Let me tell you about a woman named Ruth. She was not my grandmother, though people mistake her for that when I tell this story. Ruth lived 2 farms over from us, a widow by the time I knew her, somewhere in her 70s, with hands like old rope from 70 years of well work and garden work and canning work. Ruth kept a barrel behind her springhouse that her own mother had built, and by the time I saw it, it had been in continuous use for over 4 decades. I drove out to see that barrel again 3 years after I left the community, just to look at it one more time, because I wanted to know if I had remembered it correctly. I stood there for a long while, running my hand along the wood, and I had not remembered it wrong at all. It was a plain oak barrel, grey with age, banded in rusted iron, standing about 3 feet high, with a spigot near the bottom and a cloth-covered opening at the top where the water went in. Nothing about it looked impressive. That was the point. It did not need to look impressive. It needed to work. And it had worked for longer than most modern filtration systems even exist as a product line before being discontinued and replaced. Ruth told me once, standing right beside it, that she had replaced the sand and charcoal inside maybe 6 or 7 times across her entire adult life, and replaced the barrel itself exactly once, after a hard winter cracked one of the staves. 6 or 7 times, across a lifetime, compared to the plastic cartridges people now throw away every few months without a second thought. So let me walk you through exactly how it is built, because this is the part that actually matters, and I am not going to leave anything out. You start with a clean container. Ruth used a barrel. We used a wooden cask. You can use a food-grade plastic bucket with a spigot fitted near the bottom, about 2 inches up from the base, so sediment that settles does not clog the outflow. Drill that hole before you add anything else and fit the spigot tightly, because a leak at this stage will drive you mad later. At the very bottom, you place a layer of gravel, roughly 4 inches deep. This is not decorative. This layer keeps the finer material above it from washing straight through and clogging your spigot. On top of the gravel, you add a layer of coarse sand, about 6 inches deep, well rinsed beforehand so you are not adding a fresh layer of dust and dirt to water you are trying to clean. On top of the sand goes the layer that does most of the real work: crushed charcoal, ideally made from hardwood, burned slow and cooled before use, layered about 5 inches deep. Chemists call this activated carbon filtration. We just called it the black layer, because that is what it looked like, and because none of us had ever heard the word activated in our lives. On top of the charcoal, another thin layer of sand, about 2 inches, to catch the charcoal dust before it can rise into your clean water. Finally, a layer of fine cloth or a few inches of fine gravel on the very top, so that when you pour water in, you are not disturbing the layers underneath every single time. Water goes in the top, slow and steady, never poured all at once. It works its way down through cloth, sand, charcoal, sand again, gravel, and comes out the spigot noticeably clearer than when it went in. Sediment gone, a great deal of bacteria trapped in that charcoal layer, taste completely transformed. But here is the sentence I need you to actually hear, and not skip past because it sounds like a technicality. This filter removes sediment and a significant amount of biological contamination. It does not remove every pathogen, and it does not remove chemical contamination. That is why the second step is not optional. After filtering, you bring the water to a full rolling boil. Not a simmer, not steam rising off the top, an actual rolling boil. And you hold it there for 1 full minute, at low elevation. 3 minutes if you are somewhere above roughly 6,000 feet. That heat finishes what the barrel started. Sand and charcoal handle the sediment and cut down the biological load dramatically. Heat handles what is left. 2 old, unglamorous steps working together, and between them they solved a problem that a lot of modern households have never once had to think about. Because they have never had to. Let me be honest about the mistakes, because I made every one of them myself before I understood what was going wrong. The first year I tried building my own barrel after I left the community, I used sand straight from a hardware store bag without rinsing it first, and I ended up with cloudier water coming out than what I had poured in. The second mistake, I packed the layers too tightly, pressing them down because I thought tighter meant more filtration. And instead, I nearly stopped the water from flowing through at all. A good filter needs some looseness for water to move through evenly. The third mistake, and this one is almost embarrassing, I skipped the boiling step more than once early on because the water looked perfectly clear coming out of the barrel. And clear is not the same as safe. Looking clean and being safe are 2 entirely different claims. And I had to relearn that the hard way. The fourth mistake was letting the barrel sit unused for months at a time without running fresh water through it, which let the charcoal layer lose most of its effectiveness. A filter like this needs to be used regularly to stay useful, not stored like an emergency backup you check once a year. If you are the kind of person who would rather understand how something actually works than pay a subscription fee to be told when to replace a cartridge you cannot even see inside of, you already know what to do. Come back for the next one, because I'm going to show you what we did with the water once it was clean. Storage methods that kept it drinkable for over a year without a single chemical additive. And that is a conversation on its own. Now the honest limits, because I promised you I would not soften this. This method is for sediment-heavy water, for biological contamination from wells, cisterns, rain catchment, and rivers in an outage or a grid-down situation where your normal treated supply is compromised or unavailable. It is not for water you know or suspect contains heavy metals, industrial runoff, or chemical contamination. No barrel of sand and charcoal built by hand is going to reliably strip out chemical contamination the way a properly engineered carbon block system designed for that specific purpose can. It is not for floodwater carrying fuel, agricultural chemical runoff, or sewage without a great deal of additional pre-treatment I have not covered here. And it is not a permanent replacement for a tested, reliable daily water source if you have access to one. This is what you build for the days when that source fails you. If you live somewhere with known agricultural runoff, an old industrial site nearby, or a well that has already tested positive for anything beyond bacteria and sediment, this method is not the answer to that specific problem, and I would be lying to you if I said otherwise. Anyone telling you that a barrel and a fire will handle every possible water emergency you could ever face is selling you something. And I am not selling you anything today. Here is the principle underneath all of this, and it applies to a great deal more than water. There is good money in selling a household something they must keep buying, 1 unit at a time, for the rest of their lives. There is no money at all in teaching that same household how to build one thing, once, that keeps working for decades without a single repeat purchase. Nobody can sell you a monthly bill for rain. Nobody can bill you quarterly for a fire and a bucket of sand. That is not an accident of the market. That is the market working exactly as it was designed to. This weekend, I want you to actually build one, even a small version, even just to see it work with your own hands. Come back and tell me what your water looked like before and after, and how long it took to filter through. Type the word barrel in the comments if you have ever gone through a boil water notice or an outage with absolutely no backup plan at all. I want to see how many of you have already lived through exactly what I am describing. Now let me close both of the things I opened with. The Yoda well ran for 109 years without a filter cartridge because it was never the well doing the filtering in the first place. It was the ground itself, layers of natural sand and stone the water passed through on its way down. The exact same principle as the barrel, just built by the earth instead of by hand, over centuries instead of over an afternoon. We simply copied what the ground was already doing and made it portable. And the ratio I promised you, the one my grandmother used and never wrote down. 4 inches of gravel on the bottom, 6 inches of coarse sand, 5 inches of hardwood charcoal, 2 inches of fine sand on top of that, and a cloth cover to keep it all in place. 4, 6, 5, 2. That is the whole thing. Nothing more complicated than that, and nothing less important either. Waste nothing, and boil what you are not certain of. The people who built this country with their hands knew things we are only just now starting to remember we ever needed.